morning and welcome to our conversation on arts and culture in San Diego. My name is Rebecca Smith and I am a commissioner with the City of San Diego's Commission for Arts and Culture, and I'm really looking forward to a conversation today that I'm hoping doesn't just end here, but is a conversation maybe that our audience can have, I don't know, in the dinner parties that you're going to host in your backyard, back when you get to your offices, or even just with somebody that you can share this afternoon. Because we really care about arts and culture in San Diego, and so I'm excited to introduce you to our guests this morning. I'm going to introduce them in a way that I know them, because this is really a personal conversation, and after the year that we've had, sheltered and distanced, I'm really looking forward to a more personal conversation about something that we all care about. So thank you all for being here today. So when I think about introducing Sheryl White, I think about what she had an opportunity to teach me when we served on the Arts and Culture Commission together, really about the work in San Diego with arts organizations not being transactional, but really about being transformative. And even 0 to 60, as we greeted each other today, she's talking about her work at the Old Globe Theater and really persuading me, we'll talk more about this later, to go to an exhibit at the Museum of Art. But I'm really just happy to have you here today, so thank you. Everyone meet Sheryl White. Next to her is James Halliday, and I had an opportunity to meet James when he was back in the startup sector and still working in this really kind of entrepreneurial sense. I know you really care about quality of life in San Diego. We are Mission Hills residents. I think you grew up in Mission Hills. I've only been there 20 years, but I think you are on generations, right? Like 5. 5 generations, wow. Yes. When we're meeting for coffee in Mission Hills, like people are always just greeting him because they remember that he was there. He's now the executive director of A Reason to Survive so please welcome James Halliday. Good to see you. And then Linda Caballero Sotelo. I knew Linda when she was the chief executive officer of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce back in the day, and really excited to see about the work that you've been doing as executive director of the New Americans Museum. But you also care about family and, again, how our economy really works in San Diego, and it's really great to see how you're bringing that to the arts. So,
thanks.
Not your biography, but just who you are and how I know you, and just really why I'm so excited that you're with us today. So, New York Times, January 13th, right after the new year started, we're starting to come out of this global pandemic, and one of the arts critics, Jason Fagaro, writes about how arts are a catharsis. And really, like, how do we start to see, as we're coming through this season, that arts are a catharsis in so many ways? Spiritually, emotionally, physically, right? Socially, economically. And so thinking about just that notion of arts as a catharsis, and thinking about our conversation around arts and innovation and sustainability and engagement, we're setting the bar high here. I want to start off with this question for each of you, which is, why the arts? Like I said, keep it personal if you need to, but why the arts? Linda, I'll have you go first.
Gosh, why not the arts, right? For me personally, I've been involved in the arts for many, many years in different capacities in different ways. But you know, the arts provide a space, arts and culture in general, provides a space to explore things that you wouldn't otherwise in different sectors or in different environments. It can be a safe space for that, both for communities and for individuals. You mentioned the time during the beginning of the pandemic, for example, when the arts became a refuge for many folks, even at home, even with their children, you know, in a space for artists to explore and think about things, and curators and other cultural producers and communities to do things that they would never find the time to do otherwise. There was so much going on all the time in our lives that you put that in the back burner, but it's something that nourishes you, your spirit, your mind, and allows innovation, makes you think about problems and things in ways that you wouldn't have otherwise, being very pragmatic in our day-to-day. So the arts, for me, has been a vehicle to enact social change in many ways through my practice, both as an administrator, as a curator. You know, returning to the arts has also been a way to do that. So impact can come in different guises, in this case through the arts and culture in our city, in our region. Right. It provides a space for rediscovering things that we may not have thought about looking into.
How long have you been in San Diego?
Oh my gosh, let's contextualize that. I'm a binational border resident since the moment I was born. Born and raised in Tijuana. I crossed the border as a child every day to attend parochial school in San Diego. So I was navigating two worlds, two cultures, two languages, in what seemed at the time a seamless way, but in reality, you're really acculturating and absorbing this very unique experience of growing up in our region. Firmly in San Diego, many, many years, certainly over 20 some years. It's my home, the whole region. So yes, I've lived abroad and in other cities and other places, but San Diego is a very unique, special place, the binational region.
Right, very cool. So I love your phrase, arts as a way to bring about social change.
Yes.
Very cool, thank you, Linda. Sheryl, what about you? Why the arts?
Well, like Linda, why not? But of course, it's just being a human. I think that arts is just so important just for daily life and expression and everything. Whether you are an artist of any kind or you like to enjoy going to arts organizations and witnessing it, watching it, or all of those things. If you're an artist and you like to go and see other people, it's just part of being a human. And without it, what are we? So I think it's just important for life.
Yeah. So this morning when you first saw me, you were starting to show me you couldn't help yourself, right?
I
the
couldn't
pictures
help myself.
on your phone of this exhibit at the Museum of Art. So tell us a little bit more about that, because I loved your excitement around it.
Well, I should have looked the name. I know her first name is
Right. We'll find
Anna,
it. Thank you,
and
Google.
she's
We'll
from
find it.
Spain.
Yes.
And there's this beautiful. I met her. She's amazing. And you walk into these galleries and you see what looks like old European style photographs, and they are colored pencil drawings. And you get up close and you're like, and I mentioned to Anna, the artist, so these really aren't drawings. You drew over photographs. And she's like insulted. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. It's amazing to just go and see. But this pencil drawings, it took all these pencil drawings in these two galleries, took her 1 year during the pandemic to do, and they're all quite large. And then she did two big wall pieces that each took 1 year each. So that whole exhibit took 3 years. It would have taken me, it wouldn't have been enough time in my life. But she's amazing. It's worth seeing. And there's another good.
Well, that's a cool thing about art is in less than 2 minutes, you were like, it was infectious. I'm like, all right.
Well, I showed photos because I couldn't believe it.
Right. And that's what art does for us. It connects us and really gets us excited about things that are
so
going on in
people
the world.
are there, they're looking and they're going, no way.
Right.
This is not pencil drawing.
Right.
And that happens when you're at a play, you walk out, some people are mad, some people are happy, you're talking, you're bantering back and forth and not, seeing the same thing.
Right. Art does that.
It does that. It brings us all together.
Very cool. What about you, James? Why art? Why the arts?
So I'm reminded every day by my colleagues and friends that art and culture fit together, and that art, rather than being a set of artifacts, is a set of practices. And interesting to think about the action of arts and culture and what it does to the city we live in, the region we live in, our lives. And so for me, arts and culture is really an encounter both with things that seem familiar, but also a chance to encounter things that are quite uncomfortable, quite vulnerable, and often unknown. And the chance to do that, I think you really tap in. You contextualize art in a place, and all of a sudden you're really at like the level of pulse. And that word culture, right, is one of these very, very deep things. And I think, again, you don't only know the place and people in terms of like where they've been and their mixed histories to get to the present, but it really speaks volumes about sort of the values and direction and intention going forward. I think, in this binational region and the borderland region we live in, arts and culture is like preeminently important for the work we're all doing, and particularly in terms of recovery and putting some pieces back together and rethinking some important systems and structures in our society. So arts and culture is everywhere, and I think putting on our our sort of creative lens to go out and seek it out, and then welcome others to that process.
Right. So the phrase that I'm hearing with you is that sense of art not just as artifacts, but as a set of practices. So talk a little bit about maybe that set of practices, especially within the context of your organization. So you're with A Reason to Survive. You're the 3rd executive director. Tell us more about the organization.
A Reason to Survive, with that handy acronym ARTS. We are currently based in National City, have been since 2012. So this is an organization focused on what we call creative youth development. And creative youth development is taking young people and their families where they are and with and through the arts and creative practices. It's about shaping better individual futures and about understanding the dynamics of a community in terms of where it's going. It's contextualizing arts and culture where young people are living in order to make that future brighter. So our programs do that, sorts of mentorship do that, the ways in which young folks are having these encounters with spaces and people in the community, some of whom they know, many they don't know, and building community together is art in practice.
Yeah. Is there, I think about just visiting, I don't know, about a year and a half ago, is there a story of a family or a young person in general that you could tell us that really kind of, captures the work that you're doing?
So the Santos family has been coming to arts for as long as I've been with the organization. There are 2 boys and a very eager mother who has volunteered and calls me, texts all the time to ask about our next programs. But David and Marvik, the 2 sons, have become really talented visual artists and are really drawn to illustration, comic books, and using technology to enhance that. But when Mom calls me, it's about the relationships that they're building. She sees that in the dynamic between the siblings, but also in this whole variety of young folks that the kids don't go to school with, but they meet at the Arts Center. And so to have a place to come together, this idea, and as I was thinking about families like the Santoses, I think about arts in terms of who are we becoming, our sense of belonging, and the Arts Center is a place of gathering. And so again, these practices of becoming, belonging, and gathering feel really crucial to the work, and the Santos family is a great example of that.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Linda, tell us about the New Americans Museum.
The New Americans Museum, for those of you that have visited, and if you haven't, come see us very soon. We've been around since 2002, founded by Deborah Zake, of course, local legend, philanthropist, incredible mentor, and with a vision to really capture the stories and the narratives of multi-generational immigrants, all immigrants, right, in our country, and to make sure that those stories and narratives that have not been included in our national storytelling are included in different ways. And so for us, that means presenting exhibitions, capturing oral histories in our recording facilities, also presenting performances and commissioning all kinds of different works in our spaces at Liberty Station and in communities. We've had a micro-enterprise program in City Heights, in Logan Heights, and Linda Vista. When we ask community members, immigrants, multi-generational, many and some recent immigrants, what are the kinds of things you'd love to connect with around the arts and culture, to feel a part of being in America, being part of our democracy and our life here. And many of them wanted to connect just with other community members. They wanted to be in an environment and in a setting that was welcoming, that they could practice English but learn a skill. And so we had a micro-enterprise around creative sectors with artists involved and teaching artists to teach them how to sew, and in the process connect with each other, make things, have a skill, but also build community. And so our museum really exists to build community and to make sure that the voices that have been silent for so long from all our communities, with so many refugees, immigrants, asylees in San Diego, that they're heard in different ways. So that's our focus. And more than ever, what better way than to hear about each other's stories, our families. Many of us don't even know what we have these traditions, right? We bake something once a year that we learned from our grandma from Sweden, and we don't even know anything about it, but we do it, right? Or our grandma in Peru or whomever. And so we want to celebrate those things as being uniquely American, part of the fabric of our nation that has made us truly, the greatest country on earth because of the diversity and the inclusive practices that we should really be focusing on espousing more than ever after last year and many years before that.
Right. Well, and I think about how in San Diego, it feels like, at least in the work that we all do, there aren't so many natives. Somebody comes from someplace else, right? Whether it's Chicago or Boston or the Philippines right? And so to be able to really celebrate that in San Diego is really
And
cool.
celebrating our Native American community, right, who have been here since day one.
Yes.
And so making sure that they're part of the conversation and part of their storytelling in their own authentic way, just as our other communities should be.
So you talked about micro-enterprising and the artists. So you've got this workforce development, this sort of jobs creation piece that's going on there. Not a lot of people think of museums, right, kind of in that way. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So we need to change that. We need to really embrace the notion, the idea that the practice of arts exists at all levels. That is a specific sector, but it's also connects with all other sectors, that creates jobs, that invites and attracts tourism and brings a lot of investment into the city, that provides and builds skills in school children, not only to connect, but for them to be able to thrive. So it's really juxtaposing that with all the needs that we have in our region, but thinking of it in a very fresh way and saying, we should have a countywide arts office. We should, really.
We'll get there.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Yay! But all those things should be synergistic, and they should also be endemic to how we do every part of our work and business in our city. And there's great models all across the country for that. But San Diego is very unique, right? We have an incredible art scene, emerging artists, and artists that need to get paid, curators of color that need to be part of the conversation, that need to have an opportunity to be in all the museums and all the important institutions that they're not participating in. And we're, as an institution, we're very focused on that, especially looking inwardly and saying, yes, we've always been about diversity, inclusion, and access, but does our practice manifest that? And for us, it has been really taking a hard look, not just because we're a museum about immigration, but do we really, practice what we preach? Are we looking to diversify our board even more? Absolutely. Are we looking to make sure that we have curators of color, BIPOC, and Latinx and others? Absolutely, for them to really inform what our communities need and to support institutions and organizations and commissioners and others that are doing this work on a daily basis.
Right.
So.
And seeing it from all those different angles, I want to bring in, just kind of Sheryl's perspective. You were talking with me earlier, Sheryl, about just working at the Old Globe yesterday. And so, just to go in as a volunteer and as a supporter, talk a little bit about what you're doing with the Old Globe.
Oh, well, that part was, yesterday was more party planning, but
Still part of the art
yeah,
scene.
it still
yes.
is. But
Yes.
it's just amazing to watch all the things that are going on at the Globe, the changes that are happening, the positive changes, the arts organizations are just like any other company or organization that is not a non-for-profit. You have to listen to the community, what they need, what they want, what they desire, and react and bring the best artistic self you can to them, and the whole educational pieces.
Huge.
Like you both are very involved with that. The children are. I'm a native San Diegan, and I grew up going to Balboa Park for art visits to paint. We'd come in buses,
Right.
and we'd take our little easel, and we'd
Be out in
paint
the park.
the arches. Everybody was painting arches and trees. That was like the thing. But yeah, you have to start early, and lots of times we're going to all these organizations, especially performing arts, and you see in the audience mostly older people a lot of times. Let's just say it.
Keep it real, Sheryl.
But then I have to remind myself I've been feeling that way for like 40 years. I've been feeling so we're always aging. Maybe we're there's a lot of young people in there too. You just don't see them as much, but they start young and then they grow and they're old like me all of a sudden, and then it's just, you have to start getting young people involved with not only participating in the arts, but showing how important it is to give to the arts. And no matter if you have any money or not, you have to show young people it's really important to go and help this organization because it's helping you a lot. So how can you help them survive? And you know, how let's think of ways maybe we can volunteer there or get the kids real excited about it.
Yeah.
And I like all the schools in town. Not all of them, but there's a lot of schools that have a lot of volunteer. You have to sign up. The kids have to sign up for a certain number of hours a year to. Do you guys ever use those?
Yeah, we have a program that we deliberately focus on Title I schools and schools that have large populations of students of color. Why? Because, you know, to your point, I love what you're saying about looking at the next generation, looking at sustaining not only donors but volunteers and being involved. But the truth is, a lot of young people from our communities of color do not feel included or have not had the opportunity to be a part of those environments. That our environments can be very rarefied, they can be very exclusive, they can be frankly very white. So what do we do to open the doors, right? So that they feel that we all feel we belong in different environments. So our, for example, our internship program that works with high school students now, and I have to tell you, at first I was just college students, you know, it's too much work. But I'm telling you, our high school students and our volunteer coordinators, Celia would kind of rave about them. They are so dedicated. They never imagine themselves working in a museum or having the responsibility of what a registrar is or curatorial practice or even the fundraising or the event planning. They're like, you know, so for us it's really showing our next generations of students of color and all students that have never been exposed to say, you belong here too. And it pays well and you can have a career. And when you make that income, you can be on the board and give back. We've got to open the doors though for them to come in and feel comfortable. So it's incredibly not only gratifying, but it's eye-opening to see.
Super important. And to get them in there early. To help, to do whatever little job or whatever they can feel excited about doing.
Right, absolutely. James and I always talk about like cross-sector collaboration, and as all of you were talking, I'm thinking, does Junior Achievement have an arts entity, right? Because they've got a bank and they've got a media outlet, but it'd be interesting to say, like, let's get some arts in Junior Achievement. But how do we start to think, I mean, especially as the world is opening up, how do we start to think about doing our part, whether it is planning a social event for a nonprofit organization or getting students involved from the schools for an internship program or whatever, but it's really, and we'll get there, that's kind of the final conversation, is how do we get people really involved and engaged. But you brought up something, Sheryl, that I thought was interesting, and I want us to riff on this a little bit around the support of the arts and sustainability of support, because I think at some point, it can't just be about like how we used to fund organizations back in the day. So really kind of anyone, however you want to take this, so someone who was invited to our panel wasn't able to make it today, friends of ours as well, Brandon Stepp with David's Harp, and here he is telling me that Mackenzie Scott, formerly Jeff Bezos of Amazon, happened to send the organization here in San Diego $1 million last week when she announced out of her 286 organizations across the country, right? David's Harp, only organization in San Diego that was selected, but it literally was like, I mean, he said it came out of the blue.
It was totally random?
Totally out of the blue.
Wow.
And when you look into sort of, and she actually did a blog post when she released the names last week, for her it was about trust. It was about, I know this organization, I know they're doing good work, I know that they can just come to the table and make sure that these young people are going to do, back to what you said, it has to be about getting the young people involved, and here's $1 million out of the blue. So we're starting to see, I mean, serving as, I am the longest serving commissioner now, since you are not on the commission any longer, and the crazy thing is, the dollars are going down, the budgets as we know, and so at some point what I'm always saying and trying to encourage the community to say is, how do we find some different ways that are more sustainable? How do we find some different ways that are more creative? Can we be partnering with other sources of revenue to continue to make the arts happen? So Any thoughts on that? You know, we went from Mackenzie Scott to whatever, but yeah, any thoughts on that? What would some ideal ideas be?
I'm going to put a finger on this word reinvention in terms of what museums can be, and what and really just turning them inside out, repackaging them, and talking about these cross-sector collaborations,
right.
And real opportunities for young people, communities of color, folks that don't necessarily think that those spaces are places of belonging or familiarity, and welcoming folks in. So when you turn an institution like a museum or a nonprofit or any arts and culture site inside out, show it to community, and community looks back at it, and there's a conversation that happens right there.
Right.
And I think in terms of, we're talking about trust-based philanthropy, and funders like Mackenzie Scott and others here. The Claire Rose Foundation is a wonderful supporter of our organization and those in the Creative Youth Development Network in San Diego. I think when you turn these institutions inside out, what you have then is, we were talking before, it's almost that fishbowl conversation to welcome funders to that. And so tearing down these walls of grant making and recipient, and just basically making it as frictionless as possible for the exchange, not only of money, but of a two-way conversation to understand needs. And then I think like Ms. Scott wrote about in her Medium post, right? Basically the bottom line is, you do your research, you find those organizations that are doing the right work, both quantitatively and qualitatively, you write the check, you get out of the way.
Yeah.
And that getting out of the way is a huge gesture in giving up power, and power is at the center of what has been these traditional relationships between philanthropy and a nonprofit sector, and specifically in arts and culture. And what that entails, there's a big conversation there, more than we have time for today.
Right.
But it is about power,
Yeah.
and how we reframe that and have new conversations about it.
Right.
Yeah, but the Mackenzie Scott, her giving that $1 million is amazingly awesome, but to then just step back and let, then maybe they'll never see her again. I would think that staying involved or staying a part of the organization is important for the longevity of the group. Otherwise, there's just going to be these one-time gifts. I personally feel that your board and the people that are really, really helping the organizations have to really mesh with your mission statement. They have to feel it, they have to agree with it, want it, and sustain it.
Right.
And they don't have to be billionaires, but they can commit to giving the minimum board member gift, and maybe a little more, whatever they can do, but they're with you. You've come together, you write that mission, you all agree together, and if you have a person that you want to bring in, but they don't quite agree with everything, or not everything, but the main reason for your existence,
Right.
and they agree to give you, say, $25,000 or whatever, but then they're not connected.
Right.
I think you really need, those people are great, but you need more people that are gonna really be there and continue to give every year.
Right.
And you keep them involved. You don't let them go off. You don't let them get involved with some other group that's similar to yours.
Right.
Because they'll find somebody else.
Yeah.
You have to, it's kind of creating.
It is also about engaging board members too, not just
You engage
volunteers, not
them.
just the audiences.
You engage
Yes.
them, but you give them don't let them feel like dead weight. They want to, you want people that don't want to just not do
And
anything.
don't be afraid to help them exit if they need to.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because, no, listen,
they have
honestly,
to have terms.
Right.
the thing is that the mission has to drive the work, right? And it's not a static thing, it's a living thing.
Right.
And those conversations with our board members are about those things. Are you embracing the mission? And maybe not wholly, maybe there's aspects of the work you do that someone gravitates to. Find them a space for them to do that within the
Absolutely.
organization, but sometimes we are so desperate to hold on to that board in that way that we also lack the vision as administrators and volunteers in some cases to look at the big picture. I mean, the word sustainability to me is passe. Why? Because, if you own a business, if you're just sustaining your business, are you growing? Are you evolving?
Right.
Are you looking at what you need to be doing to be relevant?
Right.
You're just maintaining it. We are of the mindset that it's really progression, it's evolution of that mission. I may not, or you may not be the leader tomorrow, and that's fine. Who is next? Who's being groomed for what the organization will require?
Right.
That includes board members, right? Because we are in constant flux. And if we learned anything over the last 18 months is that, that anything can happen, that that we really need to live the moment and embrace it. Right. And if that means looking at your mission, looking at your work and say, okay, you guys, where are we at right now? What do we need to do? Who's not at the table and why? I think that's fundamental. As far as fundraising, I mean, the moment we stop looking just locally, in the case of our museum, and just trying to adjust what we do to what we felt a funder, what we felt the mood of philanthropy was the moment when we began to grow and soar in many ways. Focusing on the mission, right? But also looking at innovation. Also looking at, well, let's not just look at this year and get through the fiscal year or the calendar year. Right. Let's look at multi-year, right? What can we, even if we have limited resources already, or even if we're the small guy on the block as far as museums go, well, why does our vision have to be small? No, it can be as big as the Met or anybody else or the Smithsonian.
Why not, right?
Why not, all of us? So that's when we look nationally. That's when I began to cultivate, and some of our board members and some of our other folks around us champion on a national level. Because you're right, not everyone can give at the same level. But guess what we have? Human capital.
Yes.
There are people there are skills that are out there. There's no price on that. You leverage them. I mean, we've talked about doing something, now is the time, right? We couldn't do it a year and a half because we're so busy, but then all of a sudden we're not.
Right.
So now it's like, what should we be doing to help you grow, to help us evolve as well? So, we have been cultivating a relationship with different foundations, including donors, to see where those things align. And we received a pledge, which we haven't announced, but I'm going to announce, a pledge from the Ford Foundation for a 3-year grant to our museum.
Congratulations.
So we're thrilled about that because they understood us. They took the time to listen to us on our focus and our mission. They knew all our dirty laundry, that we didn't have the cash flow, we didn't have this at the time, and we were doing all these things that nonprofits do.
Right.
But they understood the quality, the tenacity of our work, the commitment, and the skills and the knowledge base. Give us the tools to really soar. And I think all of our institutions need that. So with that commitment, we leverage that for others. And that's where we're going to launch our Curator in Residence program, where a fellowship where we're going to invite curators of color to apply to curate our exhibitions for the next 2 years. People that have not been at the table, and giving them the support through another fund that we were able to secure. So I'm telling you, it's not rosy, and it's a daily grind to continue that support. You know that, we all know that, amen, right? But what makes you get out of bed?
Right, yeah.
The driver.
It's new, it's messy, but it is, like you said, the progression. It's the progression. James, when we were on a call the other day, you even talked about how we in the arts have to not look at it as in sort of, I think you used the phrase charity talk anymore, but really truly, like, how do we see it in a different way? Can you talk a little bit more about?
I mean, it's on everything. So much of what was just said here, from board engagement to donor engagement to staff engagement to family engagement to, in our case, young people we work with. So just to piggyback on what Linda's organization is doing, the transition from offering programs and services where there's a benefit, you're looking at opportunities and access to experience those, and then there's almost this, okay, once you've done it, kind of go away. This is over. That's
over. Yeah.
How do you re-engage young folks or folks who have been part of programs to say, the question, as the Roots said, do you want more? And in the case of young people, young adults, livelihood, opportunities, jobs, entries into creative pathways that are meaningful and beyond just showing up to an after-school program and being like, okay, I do that on Tuesdays. What else? Kind of scanning. Check that. So the idea then of having conversations again with the board to say, we're an organization that has been providing after-school programs in arts and culture, for example, but here's what we want to do. We want to pay our young people. What does that look like to compensate them for their time, their energy, their ideas, what they're building? this is a paradigm shift for so many, like within organizations. One, to have that conversation, and two, to, I think to your point you're getting at, right? Business model shouldn't be a scary phrase for nonprofits to think about, and the sort of the hybrid options on how we not just fundraise, but have fee-based services and look across a sort of a portfolio approach to how we work.
Diversified portfolio of funding.
That diversification has got to be.
That, yes.
And let me borrow again that phrase, sustainability. There is something sort of, if maybe resiliency is better, right?
Yeah.
The resiliency of an organization is going to be how many options, how many types of both sort of revenue you're able to generate, and then drive those new kinds of programs.
One thing I would just like to throw in for you
Please
guys
do. Yes.
is what organizations need to really try to do better at is to ask your donors more questions about them and what they would like to do, instead of putting in the position where if you really are honest with yourselves, lots of times you're sitting there across from somebody, you might be saying, this is what our organization is doing, and this is where we're going, and you're so excited about it. You're telling them everything about your organization. And I think just taking a little bit of time to really understand the person that's in front of you, how they can, not just how they can help you, but what do they feel? Just
their passions.
What do you feel about arts? What do you feel about San Diego? We really value you as an individual and want you to feel engaged here. How can we better do that? And just shut your mouth and let them talk.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do because you're so used to really wanting to
Pitch.
not just maybe the pitch, but kind of you're just excited. You're excited about your organization. There might be something that you don't know about this person that you could develop together, and it would work perfectly for your organization. And it takes time to do, but you think about all the time you spend trying to get new dollars, and you don't invest as much time trying to really enrich that person you've got already.
Right.
And then people might leave and you don't know why they left, and they don't want to tell you. Sometimes they do, but it's they just don't feel engaged.
So true. The same things that
Life
motivate
is short.
the rest of us, right? Exactly. Like, what things do you get involved in? Like, what attracted you to give of your own time, whatever that might be. It's the same thing that we see. Yeah, it's the same thing. Why are they connected to it, if they are?
Yes.
Or what aspect of it? Absolutely.
To make it more about them.
Yes.
And we all know, I mean, they're there for the organization, but for the organization to make it more about them, and I think it can also result in some, what's that called when you write in a will? Oh my gosh.
Like planned giving.
Yeah, estate
planning.
planning.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of thing happens.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, there's so many. I mean, I think it's about listening. It's about taking the time.
Yeah.
It's about, like you said, we were so busy before, and now we're not so busy, and now we're coming back into the sense of, I think what I'm hearing with all of you is an intentionality. Like, let's actually say intentionally, like even just this panel when University of San Diego, my graduate school alma mater, so I'm always going to say yes, when they said put this panel together, I'm thinking intentionally. I want Linda's voice here. I want to be able to learn from you again, Sheryl. I want to be able to reconnect with James. And so being able to say, how do we come back and do this? I want to be mindful of our time.
Can I add a quick thing?
Absolutely. See, I knew it. We keep going, we keep talking, right?
Have this mutual conversation, right, between individual donors. I'd add another group to the mix here that we haven't really hit on, which is the public sector. And it is important. This reinvention point, I mean, more than a decade ago, Mary Walshock wrote this great book about the reinvention of San Diego.
Yes.
Guess what? We're in a new chapter, new phase of reinvention, and arts and culture and design, the world capital design possibility between these two. This is framing this. My point is this. whether it's the city of San Diego, whether it's the county, whether it's local municipalities, wherever it is, there are great individuals working in our public sector, and their interests, their abilities, if you just see them sort of as a name on a door or in some sort of bureaucratic sort of Byzantine world that you can't navigate and they don't want to come find you, then you put this blockage for everyone. Knocking on that door and having these conversations. So I would say if you're a nonprofit, especially in arts and culture, talking about how it infuses all parts of our society, particularly coming out of a pandemic, it's to reach out to your county supervisor, your council person, whomever that
and
is.
The staffers.
And the staffers.
And the staffers
is key. That's where it all begins. That's that first relationship, and you'll be surprised how quickly it goes up the chain. Because you know what's great about arts and culture? Everyone loves it.
Yes.
Everyone wants to be part of it, and there's a visibility to it if you're an elected.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of skill in those staffs, and not to mention some money coming down the line, both from Sacramento as well as from DC. So make the most of it.
Right.
And you know, just going back to the notion of something you were sharing in the beginning, Sheryl, talking about the exhibit you just saw, or we're gonna go see tonight.
Yeah.
Listen, I mean, art also has the ability to delight, right? To delight, to bring joy, you know, or to bring introspection, or to question. I mean, we've had exchanges with patrons and visitors and folks just wandering in about the most insane things that you get to know and you learn from. Like, I hate this. Free speech, great. Why do you hate it? You know, or I love this. Well, why?
Why?
You know, you see tears, all kinds of things. The human emotion, the human condition. I mean, it really crosses every barrier. Culture, language, ethnicity, whatever, you know, socioeconomic status. It touches us in different ways, and it brings us delight, and it also brings all those other things. So if we start to think of it as something that nourishes our soul and our mind and our economy, you know, why not?
Why not?
A lot of times we don't think about applying for municipal funds or city funds when you're an arts institution, a space or a museum, because you're like, no, this is my lane, arts and culture, you know, or this. But guess what? You touch all these sectors. So there's all these different pools of things. I think it starts with us. We have to expand our vision and our view about what this practice does across all sectors. It starts with us, and then others can see that too.
Yes. So James mentioned the World Design Capital. So we have some crazy, cool, bold folks in San Diego with the Design Forward Alliance who have actually put in an application, and we are actually waiting to see if we are on the short list right now for San Diego and Tijuana to possibly be the World Design Capital in 2024. We should find out shortly, I mean, just as we speak. And so what's really cool is if we were to get that bid, like, can you imagine, like, what would that do for education in San Diego? What would that do for what we're trying to do with, you know, some of the families in San Diego around just getting them to where they need to be? What would that do for our economy? What would that do for, right, fill in the blank? I hear that Moscow and Frankfurt have also put in applications, so, you know, we're up against Moscow and Frankfurt, but I was going to say, but we are also, and this just in from Design Forward Alliance this morning, we are the first binational application ever. World Design Capital actually is out of Toronto. They've been around for about 10 or 12 years, but that would be super exciting for all of us in San Diego if we got that. But the cool thing is, even if we didn't get it, the fact that we're already starting to work together and talk together is just really amazing. So I just want you to actually, if you can share just in one word, what are you taking away just from this conversation, this chance to get back in person? What are you taking away? And I love how you said, like, Linda, this has to also bring us something too. One word to describe kind of how you're feeling about the work that you're doing right now in the arts, and then I'm going to close this with a poem because we can, because it's arts and culture. So one word, what would you say, James, for you?
One word.
Oh, nourished.
Nourished.
Yeah.
Good word. Sheryl, what word would you take?
Encouraged.
Encouraged.
Galvanized.
Galvanized. Very cool. You brought up the word delight earlier, Linda, and I love just being in sync with you, and I haven't seen you in forever and ever. This is a poem from the American poet Mary Oliver, and she says, because properly attended to, delight, as well as havoc, is suggestion. Can one be passionate about the just, the ideal, the sublime, and the holy, and yet commit to no labor in its cause? I don't think so. And the three of you are like, when I think about just the work that you do in this community, just so grateful for all of you. Can one be passionate about the just, the ideal, the sublime, the holy, and commit to no labor in its cause? I don't think so. the last line of her poem is so good. She says, "Be ignited or be gone." And I just love that. It's like, drop the mic. So yes, our nonprofit audience partners, thank you for just joining us today. Thank you. And I just want to say to all of you too, be ignited or be gone. Thank you.